Welcome. Let's talk books. I'm Robin Van Auken, and I'm interviewing writers about inspiration, creation, publication, and promotion of their books. Today is November 18th, 2017, and it's episode number 1. My guest is Diane Langley, author of Life Changes, a small book filled with enormous wisdom. In this book, Diane writes about a variety of topics, such as survivor guilt, letting go, self-kindness, and learning to say no. You can learn more about Diane and her book in the show notes at robinvanauken.com. Let's get started. Hello and welcome. I'm Robin Van Auken, the Wholehearted Author, and I'm here today with Diane Langley. Welcome.
It's so great to be here with you today. I'm excited. Thanks for the invitation.
I appreciate you attending. This is very early in my attempt to podcast books, and I've got some ideas. I've got some really good ideas, and I've got one idea that's kind of off the wall.
Okay.
So when I first started thinking about doing a podcast, and this is not just for you, this is for everybody's edification. I was thinking about talking about books, talking to authors only, people who have published a book. But now I've been thinking about this, and after talking to my daughter, I have an idea. There's a lot of people out there who have stories to tell that they've never been able to sit down and write. Now, I'm a writer, you're a writer. I have dozens of books in my head, and I'm still struggling to get my last one out onto my computer and so that I can print it and sell it. But I'm thinking that maybe not all stories need to be written, but they all do need to be told. So at the end of our talk today, I was going to ask you about, are there any books that you're not going to write, but you're willing to release that story?
Okay.
And I don't know if you're familiar with Elizabeth Gilbert.
Her book Magic?
Yes, her book Magic.
Okay.
So this concept comes from magic.
Okay.
She does talk about the idea that we all have this muse that's working with us, and they're only going to work with us so long. If we don't show up and put the work in, they're going to go find a writer who is going to do the job. And of course, I've explained to you in the past that I'm a scientist.
Yes.
My degrees are in anthropology, archaeology. So I always look at things from a very logical, statistical, scientific point of view. But I do have to admit that there is something to that concept, because I have felt the muse. And I have felt that the muse has left me on this last book I'm writing. And I've been putting in the work, thinking about this story, because I'm trying to invite the muse to come back.
Okay.
I'm trying to become infected maybe with more imagination and creativity, so that I can wrap up this book, which is the 6th and final book in this series that I was writing. I just waited too long and it hightailed out of here. So if not that muse, then maybe another muse. Maybe there's another similar story that's going to come in and help me with this. So be thinking in the back of your mind as we talk today about your muse, and is there one that you've ignored, maybe you want to release? Let somebody else write that book.
Okay.
Alrighty. So we're talking today about books, and as I said, I'm here with Diane Langley. Thank you so much. A little bit of background here. Diane and I both worked at Lycoming College in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and that's how I met you.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that experience with you.
I taught at Lycoming College. At the time, you were allowed to teach for 5 years without your PhD, so I had the opportunity to go there and work first in the business department, where I taught things like marketing, advertising, human resources, those types of things, and then later came back for another 3 years, actually when I was working on my PhD, and taught the corporate communication curriculum. And so I loved it. Absolutely love Lycoming College.
I love it too. I've been there now almost 15 years.
Yeah. I actually started as an adjunct teacher in the very office that you have right now.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about your background. What degrees do you have?
I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in communications. The bachelor's is more mass communications oriented, and the master's degree is in communications. And I also had 3 years of experience with Antioch University in their PhD program in leadership and change. And I absolutely love that program. I was following up, and we'll probably unfold a little bit more some of the information about, that influences my writing. And in the middle of it came life. I was working on a PhD and starting this new job teaching again. And my mother was diagnosed with cancer. And a week later, I was diagnosed with cancer. And so something had to give. We needed to do some self-care and put everything else into being able to be a good teacher. And so it was an interesting time, back at Lycoming College. And I'm from Williamsport, was born and raised in Williamsport, and went away to different places. But my love was always to come back and be able to be a part of this community and help in ways that possibly were underserved or unserved. So that's my curiosity.
And tell me a little bit about your book. You have a book here.
I have a book. I write. Part of volunteer work that I've done over the years is to write for our local newspaper called Williamsport Sun-Gazette. And I worked at one time as a business development strategist at the library, and I was writing something called the Business Toolbox. And then I wasn't working at the library years later, and I was still writing the Business Toolbox. So I contacted them and I said, I think that there's something that's a little bit different that I'd like to offer. Would you consider it? And it was a column called Life Changes, which is what I continue to write today. And I took 30 of the columns and made it into the book of the same name, Life Changes.
Well, so tell me a little bit about this topic, Life Changes. It's more expansive than the business toolkit.
Right. Business tool, this is completely different. This is, my background is an awful lot in education, and I, began in running residence halls and then teaching and then being other places in marketing and such. And I found that everybody has their story and they have their struggles with transitions, and that there's difficulty in finding language. And I think the thing that I'm most fascinated with is when there's an elephant in the room and people don't know what to do with it. And they kind of know that they have their own, and they try not to have it bump into anybody. And at the same time, there's this deep inner wish that people could express themselves so that they didn't carry a secret or a burden, or they would just be able to have a truer expression. So my passion is really looking at topics that are difficult for people to talk about, and to help to bring language to them, to help to bring a different kind of question that maybe they wouldn't have asked themselves, and to just kind of influence that, and to do it in a way that is it's not perfect English. I think I mentioned to you before, I dangle those participles. I'm sure I end the sentences with prepositions, which I'm certain if people read it, they'll go, oh my, there she did it again. She did it again, doesn't she know? I absolutely know, and I don't do it on purpose. It's more a kitchen conversation in writing with people that you feel like somebody sees you, that they get you, that they're there with you, and that from there you can decide what you want to do or not do with that information.
Okay, so you're inspired by difficult topics?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because of the difficult things in my own past. And so I can really appreciate when people go through difficult times and that there aren't resources around. And what do you do to go through those transitions? How do you rebalance? How do you do your own self-care? Because those things I don't believe are taught. It's more buck up, get over it, do those kinds of things. Be a man, be a woman, instead of being a person, being
Right.
human.
Yes.
And so I'm most fascinated when I meet people who feel, I'll say the word, vulnerable enough to be able to express themselves, to say, this is me, and I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I love that question.
Yes.
When they say, you ask them a question, they say, I honestly don't know where I'm going with this right now. How? And then they get an idea, and then they move forward. So anyway, I am very interested in, just like teaching, I was a big fan of experiential learning.
So do you see yourself as a mentor then? Or an interpreter?
I see myself as... That's an excellent question. I see myself as another human being who is interested in what their topic of interest might be, whether I'm sitting next to them or not, that I help to start the conversation. So I look at myself as a conversation starter.
Okay. So we're talking about nonfiction here, right?
Yes.
So all of your columns that you're working on,
Yes.
that resulted in this book, you're working in nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
How difficult is it for you to go up to somebody who knows you and
Yeah.
they think, oh wait, I better shut up because I could become a topic in her next column?
It's interesting you say that, because most people come up and they go, I have an idea for you. How refreshing is that?
I do get that a lot. Hey,
Yeah.
Robin, I've got a book you need to write.
Yeah,
Come on,
now I do have to say, there's some people who have said, now, are you analyzing me? And I'll say, no, I'm not analyzing you. I'm just listening. And I think that that's one of the purest compliments that you can give someone is two things, time and attention. And I find that most people don't listen. They're too busy preparing their response.
This is true. This is true. So if I were to be one of the people that you would talk to, how would you go about starting one of our conversations? Don't worry, you can shame me. I have no worries.
Okay. No, actually, we've had different conversations over time, and I would be inspired by maybe one word, maybe a story. It could be a phrase that you said that sticks out like a highlighter. Like, some people hear things in music. Some people see nature. I see words all around. I don't know how else to describe it.
Is this a form of synesthesia? Have you heard of this before?
No.
Synesthesia. It's actually a concept. The brain sometimes will work in significant ways. Like my daughter, coming back to my daughter, for example, when she sees words and letters, each word and each letter has a color.
Interesting.
And when you combine certain words, like my name, Robin, she would see it as green.
Interesting.
And some people who have synesthesia actually smell words.
Yeah.
So language has become a physical thing for them. So if you're seeing, do you actually feel like you see words floating when you're talking to people?
I tend to, sometimes when I'm talking with people, I look off to the right or to the left, and I know that there's a whole science on, if you look to one side, somebody's lying, and if you look to another side, somebody's telling the truth, and just thinking, that doesn't work with me, because I tend to like to look to somebody directly in the eye, but when there's a but there.
Right.
But I will search for words, and it's almost like I'm searching around the person that it's going to come up. And there was a show that PBS did on Einstein, and in that they had this special effects graphic where he would say to his friend, let's do a thought experiment. And all of a sudden these like words and pictures would come up. So it's kind of like you visualize without closing your eyes.
Right.
I don't know how else to explain it. But when I saw that, I thought, that's it. That reminds me of the way that words seem to come, or what might resonate with me. So you're saying if I'm sitting down with somebody, I could be doing whatever it is. We could be having a casual conversation. I may have come to you, as I did, recently for Wise Counsel on a project that I'm working on, and you could say 2 words, and I would have never put them together that way before, but to me, it just really has some energy and power behind it, and I think, oh, I love that. So anyway, anybody who knows me knows that I love words. I don't always use them correctly. I think that that's my hesitation, is that when I meet people, is they think that I'm going to say something that is always said correctly, and I don't always know what to say.
I certainly don't.
I'm a human being.
Right.
And so I get some interesting questions from people, and I get suggestions for what to write in the columns. And I thought that what I would do was dip my toe into the self-publishing and see how it went. And instead of writing something new, different people had encouraged me to, why don't you take some of the columns that you already wrote, you have a whole heck of a lot of them, and write something. And I recognize that there's a lot of readers out there who are like me. They lose track if something is too long, and they like something short. And I know for the newspaper, basically at the time that I was writing these, the columns were to be no longer than 1,800 words.
At the time. Now they're probably more like 800.
Yes, exactly.
Because they don't have enough money to pay for the paper.
The space is at a premium. It is.
That's a sad thing. That is a sad thing. So, as a published writer, did you feel distress knowing that you were going to not use words properly in your book? And how did you overcome that? Oh
my gosh, I still look at this. When I was on my way here to this interview, I picked up the book and I looked at it and I thought, oh, I really messed up in the writing who and whom and effect and affect, and I just didn't get that right. I didn't, so you see something that's in print and you think, okay, now as a self-publisher, I have the opportunity to go back and correct that. But I just haven't been motivated to necessarily, do that. It's more than I'm on to the next thing. Will I someday, if there's this big pot of money out there that, I can clean up what it was? Yes, I will.
Okay, all righty. So with this book, when did you start to succeed as a writer from taking your ideas of newspaper columns and putting them into the book? You said people encouraged you, but at what point did you actually sit down and make it happen? And then tell me about the experience when you finally finished that book and you uploaded it to Amazon or to wherever.
So I had different friends who were very encouraging, and my one friend and colleague who would do some different speaking engagements with me in the community. Her name's Patricia Boyles. And she said, I really think that it's time. And I said, Patty, I don't have the money to do this. And she said, Randy and I will front you the money to do this, and you can pay us back. So you asked me to be very honest.
Yes,
I think that this is the way that people go. You can't just wait until the right time. Right. There isn't an exact right time. So that was actually the most difficult thing in doing the book, was accepting the money, knowing that I was going to pay it back, but I recognize that I have a challenge in receiving.
Oh, I do too. I understand.
Yeah, so I thought, okay, this would be good for me. So Patty and Randy, funded it, and I went about and I used an organization called Create Space.
Yes.
and they sell through Amazon and other places. And I strongly encourage anybody who's going to self-publish to be able to do this. I think that, I don't know how much it is now, but at the time it was not affordable to me. It was affordable to my friend. It was affordable to pay back. But if you think about it, the investment of what you're doing, and it just takes you to the next level. Did I ever think that people would buy it? You know something? It mattered, but it didn't matter more, if that makes sense. It was more that I did a dream of what I had wanted to do. Years ago, I created a television show, a local one, where people could call in and meet doctors and call in and ask medical questions. And people would say to me, well, what if nobody watches? And I just pretended that my mom watched and that was enough. And I thought, if anybody else calls in, that'll be great. It'll, I'm just going to put it out there. And people were lovely, and they did, and they called in of what was their interest. So I thought, okay, if they buy it, it's because it's of their interest.
Right.
So I was very surprised. Otto's bookstore a couple years ago did a book signing when the book first came out, and it was a First Friday event in downtown Williamsport.
Yes.
It was also a major snow and sleet event.
Oh.
Where everything was canceled except for this book signing. And I was very surprised. I thought, okay, nobody's going to come. So really I left myself open to just being immersed in the moment of a couple people who were around me, to celebrate that this was happening. And I went to this little table, and here there was people lined up from where my chair was all the way back and out the door.
Wow.
And I was like, and I feel that that's boastful to say that. That's very uncomfortable for me to say, but actually that's so. And these were people that I knew their faces or I did not know their faces, and I have never been so moved on that level of recognizing that, hey, somebody does actually read. And one person in particular came up, Carol Sides. She owns Sides Music Store, and she had this big hefty bag, and she just kind of jingled it in front of me, and I said, "What's that, Carol?" I didn't even know she knew who I was. And she said, "I've cut out every single one of your columns, and this is every single one of your columns."
Oh my goodness.
And so you never know who. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. I was a writer at one time for the newspaper. You never know who you're speaking to.
So that honestly is a story I usually do not tell because it sounds boastful, but you asked me to
it is a fact.
Be honest.
We're actually writers talking to other writers.
Yeah.
So we need to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a writer, we need to know. So
yeah.
So this was wonderful. I have personally had book signings at Otto's myself, along with my husband or with Lou Hunsinger, who sometimes writes books with me.
Yeah.
And we always joke and call it a haggis stand.
Okay.
Because there was a scene out of The Simpsons, the cartoon show The Simpsons.
Yeah.
It was a school fair, and there are all these vendors who had wonderful things, cotton candy, deep fried Oreos, Then Willie, the groundskeeper of the school, he's a Scottish character on the show. He had a haggis stand serving this food, haggis, that nobody likes, and it was not popular, of course. So after that cartoon episode, my friend Lou Hunsinger and one of his writing partners, Jim Quiggle, started saying things like, it's a haggis stand. So sometimes we've had book signings where it wasn't a haggis stand, but regardless, we always laugh and keep in the back of our mind, hey, we've been to haggis stands before, so be humble and be grateful for the people who do come in and talk to you. It's a wonderful feeling.
Oh my gosh, it was very, very, very... I mean, I don't even know the word for it. It was just an incredible experience I thought, these are lovely people. And it wasn't that I doubted myself, it was because for me it was always a true thing to do. But I never had the motivation necessarily of that this would be for everybody, because my writing is not for everybody. And I think that that's one thing that if I could share with other writers, I think it's a good thing to understand that your writing just may not be the cup of tea for somebody else, and that's okay. And if you write true to your heart, whatever genre it is, however your style is, instead of writing it for a market to sell it to, maybe an area that some of them might be stuck in is that they're trying to do that instead of being true to what they really want to write. And if they would just try writing the free flow, of what they think, and instead of wondering, will it sell, just let it out there and see if they come.
So you had this benefit of living in a small town, writing a regular column. Was it weekly?
It was monthly.
A monthly column?
Yeah.
Long-standing monthly column for a local newspaper. So you had built a local audience without knowing it. Knowing it. And then once this book was published, you knew you had a fan because somebody was so interested, they invested in it too and encouraged you to publish it.
Right.
So now, at this point, you had this wave that you rode without even knowing that you were on the wave. Because that's actually what happens, right? In a tsunami, you never really know that the water is rising until you get to the top.
Yeah.
The day after first Friday, we're talking about Saturday, and you're back at your house and you've got your book and you're going, okay, that's never going to happen again for me.
Right. That was a first. That's never going to happen again.
So what did you think then? What did you think to yourself, like, as far as continuing to market your book or maybe moving on to the next book? What was your next
That's a great question, because I didn't necessarily think about going and really marketing the book. I thought about what is the next thing that I need to do. So that is a great question. I knew that it wasn't, like I said, perfect. So maybe that's a little bit why I didn't push as much. Because I knew that I wanted to go back and do some edits to things. So
you've basically held back because you're feeling a little bit of shame about something in your book. Yeah. I feel the same way. Yeah. I have written novels, local people here don't even know, but I have written 5 novels about this little town. This little hometown that we live in. And I've created characters. And people I know walk into these books, and I've never told them because I'm so embarrassed. I have this persona of Robin Van Auken, the archaeologist, the instructor at Langley College,
Right.
And then I have this, I'm writing these romance novels over on the side. And
I love it.
I first started writing them under a pen name. I was keeping these 2 personas separate.
Yeah.
And it was just exhausting. It was exhausting. At first it was exhilarating because I could do whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about erotica here. I'm not writing that. I'm just writing simple, like the steamy romance novels that you'd read in, the steamy Harlequins.
Yeah.
But still, I was embarrassed. Eventually, I finally merged, came out of the closet, and put my name on all of my books. But I still haven't pushed them because, like you, I feel that there's parts in my book that could be better. Now, I've gone back and I've improved 2 of them, but I have 3 more that I really think needs work before I even tell people, hey, look over here.
Yeah.
Is that, in your opinion, really worth holding back your work? Shame and embarrassment over maybe the dangling participle, the whom, the effect.
Yeah, all that. I think that I plan to start and go out and speak more. And with that, I will bring the book.
Yes.
And at least mention that it's out there, or do you know what I mean?
Be unapologetic.
Okay.
Do it. Okay. I will be if you will be. Let's make a pact here to
like that
start being brave.
Yes.
Because that's one of the biggest things that holds us back. Is the idea behind wholehearted means that I'm basing this off of another person's work.
Yeah.
Maybe you're familiar with her, Bree. The wholehearted author is a concept that came from a wholehearted approach that was developed by another person, a researcher.
Okay.
And one of the things that she discovered, Bree Brown, in her research is that...
Yes. Okay. I'm with you now.
Is that when she loved people the most were at their most vulnerable, which is what you mentioned.
Yes.
When they're experiencing shame.
Yes.
And at that point, when people can admit they're embarrassed, their shame.
Yes.
Then they have the sky's the limit. There's nowhere to go but up at this point. And our shame makes us who we are.
Yeah.
Our embarrassment. So
I love her. I absolutely love her. And for anybody who's, your audience are writers, on YouTube, she has a wonderful, it's about 16 minutes long, video on vulnerability and another one on shame. And I would suggest that you start with vulnerability, soak it in, and then, look at the one that's shame. I think as you were talking, it reminded me of something else. I've been to different presentations where authors talked about their book, and I wanted to listen to them, and then they kept just trying to sell their book. So I think that that's another part of me that
holding back the marketing.
I don't want to push selling. I want, if they like what it is that I'm saying, then they might be intrigued to buy the book versus having it there, really pushing. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Because I've seen some people that it was like, well, all they did...
Buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't want to buy your book. It's like I wanted to like the author enough to buy the book, to be connected with the book. And I found that if I didn't care for the author in some way, then I didn't want to invest my dollars in that and have that sit with other books on my shelf.
Well, you see my problem. You're here in my home today. You see that I have a problem with books. I have a lot of books. This isn't even part of it. I've got shelves upstairs. I've got boxes upstairs. I actually sent 10,000 books to Baghdad. Lou Hunsinger and I did a few years ago. We started this little endeavor to collect books and pack them, send them off. And it started with my son had requested books to read when he was first stationed over there. And I thought, well, if he wants a book, maybe somebody else does too. And we sent so many books that pretty soon they said, can you start sending candy? Because candy is a lot easier to carry home instead of a box, 30-pound box of books, from the post office to the barracks. So
interesting.
So it was kind of fun at first, but I love books.
I love that idea.
I do love my books, and I don't ever think about the person behind the book when I'm looking at these little treasures that I've got.
See, you love books, and I love paper and pencils. I always have ever since I was little, and then I will be sitting doing whatever, and I usually have a paper and pencil next to me, and I will write a thought, and then I will write another thought. And some people, they love to journal. I don't like to do the traditional journal. I just like to write a couple words.
Okay.
And then if it's something that somebody else said, tag it with them. But anyway, maybe somebody who's listening is interested in the idea of that, how they write. It doesn't have to be a sit down, middle of the night when everybody's sleeping.
How do people do that?
I mean, when do you get inspired, Robin? When is it
not at 4 o'clock in the morning. At 4 o'clock in the morning, instead of getting up and coming downstairs in my office and writing for 2 or 3 hours, like so many writers I hear about, I'm like, no way. I'd rather, roll back over, tuck myself under. What inspires me is getting a good night's sleep, then coming down, having a cup of coffee, and being in my home office with my dog and my cat and an empty email box. No nagging reminders. I look at my calendar and I go, nothing to do today. Or if somebody cancels. I mentioned this to you before. as an introvert, I love the concept of people canceling appointments with me.
I love your truth.
It's to me, it's like an Easter egg. It's like, oh, I didn't expect that. Oh, sure. And I make appointments with people, legitimately. They need something, I need something, whatever. But just having that little nugget of free time where I can just think.
Yeah.
Think, be alone, read. I'm always in learning mode.
Yeah.
But
now you and I write differently.
Yes.
For the longest time, I would get up in the middle of the night. You're saying I'm one of those people, 3:30 in the morning, wide awake, inspired. I actually had a computer at the side of my bed. I know they say not to do that, but I would pull the computer over and I would just start typing. I'd hit the print button. I'd go out, take it out of the printer, put it on my kitchen table, go back to bed and sleep soundly. And then I'd come out and I would read it. This is how I was writing my columns. And I'd say,
where did that come from?
I made sense. Where did that come from? And where did that idea come from? So that happened for the longest time. No, that hasn't happened for about a year. But for years, that was the way that I wrote.
That's amazing.
So I think that it's important that your listeners understand that there's not a right way.
No, everybody has a different way, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I do a lot of writing in surges, if it's creative writing.
Yeah.
Because I never regarded myself as a creative writer. It was a big hump to get over. For the longest time, I was a journalist, and I would report nonfiction, write nonfiction. But I loved the arts. I was the entertainment editor for the newspaper, so I helped people create like a coalition of independent artists and artisans to promote their arts and to give artists the recognition they truly deserve. And the person that I worked with, Penny Austin, I don't know if you remember her. She was at Lycoming College too, as a poet.
Yeah.
Well, she kept pointing out, she was a creative writer and poet. She goes, well, I'm a creative writer. Why aren't you creative? I go, no, I'm a journalist. We're not creative. We're just reporting the facts, ma'am. But I had to work on that mindset that, no, I am creative. I had to give myself permission to be creative because I kept writing creatively in the dark where nobody would see it.
Great point. The whole self-permission concept is to write how you want to write in the first place, to believe in yourself that that's something that's calling you. And I truly believe in that. I think that I just believe that people know that they want to write something. When I was in 9th grade, Susan Hancock was my teacher, and I wrote a paper and I got an A on it. And so she was the first person who I think that that's a monumental moment in my life where somebody believed in me, where I was vulnerable to write. I took the assignment, but I really had it at heart. And so I got an A, and that A and whatever comments there were, I'm certain I have it somewhere around my house, was the beginning of me saying, I can do this. But actually, I first started thinking about writing in 2nd grade. So I think that sometimes our interests go way back.
Right.
To a time that,
Yeah, I became a professional writer in probably 7th grade. I got shipped away one summer. My sister and I got shipped away to like a relative's house for the summer because my mom had something else to do business-wise and needed a break, I guess. But we were away for 1 month, shipped off to this house in Florida. We barely knew this woman. She wasn't even legally a relative. She was a friend of my mother's who had babysat us when we were, little. So we were there for a month, and we had nothing in common with this woman, this poor old woman. Now, back when I was in the 7th grade, of course, I was arrogant and, resisting leaving home in the first place. But I holed up. I just created like this little office space because she had many rooms. Her house was set up almost like dormitories for the nearby college in Madison, Florida. And she rented rooms and had little apartments. So my sister and I were bunking in this one room, and there were like desks for the college students to work at. So I had like a whole collection of markers and paper, like you said, pens and papers, different color markers.
Yes.
So I sat down and I said, man, I'm going to write some stories. So I just wrote like 3 or 4 short stories, each one in a different color of the markers. And I still consider that the moment when I first became a professional writer, even though I don't know where they are. I never sold them. But at that point, I was sitting down. I put myself, something took possession of me and said, sit down, get to work.
What a special moment in time that is.
Yeah, I can still feel what it felt like in that room, what it looked like, what the markers looked like. It was pretty cool. And after that, I progressed to a typewriter and did a lot of angst-filled poetry during high school. I guess that's the law for a lot of teenage girls.
I did the yearbook and did the different sections, in between. I was a literary editor, and I did a number of other things too. But my mother used to get. She was, I don't know what word to use, she was perplexed by me because I would wait till the last minute to write something.
You need a deadline.
But I was thinking about it the whole time. And a speech that I had to give at my high school graduation, it was an hour before graduation. I'd gotten my shower and everything. I knew what my notes were as to what I wanted, but I didn't sit down and write it till then. She's like, come on, Diane, you've got to do this. But I find that I'm that way too. So it either flows or I think about it, and then just sit down and it comes out. So everybody's different.
Do you remember that little series? It was a historical series, like Young Abraham Lincoln.
Okay.
Just small little books. And it was a whole series of them. I cannot recall what they were named, but I remember checking out.
Is that what you loved?
One of those books. I loved those kind of books, but I also was a person who loved the fairy tales. I loved being frightened. And that's a reason why I refused to give up my sleep at night and come down and work, because I enjoy dreaming. I dream a lot, and I really enjoy my frightening dreams.
That's so interesting.
But I don't like to watch scary movies on TV. You know, slasher movies?
Yeah.
I still love, though, my nightmares.
Yeah.
And fairy tales. Oh, I read every fairy tale book out there. I just kept checking those out,
Well,
too.
in my mind, I kept saying, well, that's just mean. I can remember saying as a kid, that's just mean. That's scary. So I went beyond the scary to, that's cruel. You don't do that to people. So, and people would take these, stories in, and some were loving it, and that's what was read to you, and, in story time and everything. And I just thought, there's got to be something else for me.
The real fairy tales, the original ones, they are horrific.
Yeah.
They're so frightening. And I think that's why I loved them. I was also a huge fan of Aesop's fables. I still quote them. Anytime my husband and I disagree, I'll go, hey, any excuse will serve a tyrant. I'll just throw out some kind of Aesop.
Throw the quote out.
Little quote to them, and... So, I don't know, I've always been interested in that heroic journey of every story.
Yeah.
And it's funny, it sounds like you were almost a psychologist in second grade.
Yeah.
Thinking about, why are people treating each other this way?
Right.
And feelings.
There should be something kinder. Yes, I looked at what the feelings were.
And feelings, I've never really cared about that. I have a personality type where, I've mentioned this, that I'm an introvert, but I have a big disconnect emotionally from people. I don't know if you've ever taken the Myers-Briggs personality test, the ones that were based on Carl Jung's psychology type. And I come up with this INTP personality. I think it's called the architect.
Okay.
And I was laughing about this with my daughter. I'm going to actually pull it up right now because... when you take one of these tests, the idea is to figure out, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses.
Right.
So I actually put this in a note to myself because I thought it was funny, but it's also extremely, extremely revealing. An INTP trait, our strengths are we're innovative thinkers excellent inventors, logical decision makers, enthusiastic. I can't tell you how many times I've been called that as an insult. Highly imaginative and honest. Now, our weaknesses, and this is where I disagree because I really think that these are strengths also.
Okay.
The first weakness is arrogance, which kind of says something about me thinking it's a strength. Highly withdrawn. I have a lack of empathy. I despise following rules. Oh, I do. I detest them. Rules are made to be broken. It's almost tattooed in my heart. Lack of social networking, forgetful, and lack of patience. So I just find this kind of funny. People think that I'm more, caring and sensitive than I am, but I'm absolutely not. Mm-hmm. I work so well with grumpy people. Uh-huh. Grouchy people, mean people.
Yeah.
They don't even bother me because I don't see them. They don't exist in my plane of existence.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. You were talking about the Myers-Briggs. I remember taking that in high school. And then during my career, I took something called the DISC Motivation and Behavior.
Yes.
And I actually started a company in 1995 and still have that company, Langley Communications Corporation, where I go into companies and I will utilize that instrument. It's a lot shorter. It's 28 questions versus 120 some questions. And it looks at our motivations and behavior. And yet, just like you said, I don't like use the words. I believe I don't like the word weaknesses. I have what I called word allergies, and one of them is the word weakness, because I just think that there's a different way to look at that. I look at something as that it's less of an interest to somebody or less of a motivation for somebody. It's not a character weakness about somebody. So I guess as a writer, I try to be very thoughtful about my words and try never to say that somebody has a weakness.
Right.
So that it just made me think when you were saying that.
One of the things about taking a test like that for a writer, it revealed to me one of the reasons why I'm not able to make my characters connect on an emotional level. Like so many of my novels, they're romance novels. They're supposed to have emotion and high drama and everything, and they've got some of that. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, my characters, because they're coming from my brain and that through that filter, they're not drama queens. Mm-hmm. I detest drama.
You can't relate to it.
I cannot relate to it. I cannot write it. And that's one of the feedbacks I get from some of my fans is that, oh, you need to do this. You need this emotional high. And I'm like, I'd rather even, I'm not interested in writing romance. Actually, I'm moving over to this genre now. I'm actually at the point where I'm writing thrillers. Murder thrillers at times. Yeah. So, you know what I mean? It's how my interest is going. So at this point, with this final book that I'm trying to wrap up, I have no interest in it.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm going to have to kill somebody off in it to motivate myself to get back in the writing it.
And I think that you make a great point for anybody who's listening that you may not want to write the same thing your whole life.
Never.
Your life changes. You have...
And that's the title of your book. Exactly.
Yes, your life changes. And you evolve your interests. And I think that I love the moment between when you give there's got to be a word in some language somewhere for this. But it's the moment, I call it the tipping point or the linchpin, that where you actually recognize that you want to give something up, and at the same point in the next breath you're taking something new on, and it's so refreshing to let go and to take on. But whatever that little moment is, that aha, that's what I like to write about.
So that moment I'm experiencing with this book, I have been trying to talk myself into giving it up. Can I end a book in a 5-book series? I've been promising people these characters in this story for so many years now. Can I really just walk away from it? Part of me says, I don't care about that anymore.
Yeah.
I've got 25,000 words written now, and the part of me that's logical says, you do not walk away from that. You get yourself at the computer and you wrap up that book and get busy.
Yeah. I I tend to find that if I'm not interested in something, I move away from it. And I think, okay, there's always the invitation to go back to it. But, if I don't, that's okay.
Hey, there's that segue I've been waiting for.
What's that?
The segue to the muse and the idea of abandoning stories. Mm-hmm. So, of course, I've already been talking about abandoning a story.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I want to know is, do you have a story that you want to tell, but you're never going to write it in book form? You're going to let that story go out there. Is there anybody out there listening that may be interested in this?
Well, mine's probably completely different, and you gave me a little heads up before we sat down that you were going to ask me this question, so I was thinking about it, and the only thing that I ever wish that I would have written that I didn't write started in second grade.
There you go.
And it was, talk to me as a second grader, and that I had decided that each year, when I was in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, I was going to write this lifetime series of this is this age. This is the interest of this age.
A glimpse at the 3rd grader.
Yeah, because I found that so many people, they didn't know how to talk to kids in 2nd grade. And I think that was probably when I was learning to do cursive writing and just became more fascinated with the whole pen to paper and everything. But I thought, I'm going to do this series of each year, what it's like to be, and then I don't know when I'll end it, but then I'll end up, I could picture, we had encyclopedias back then where they were on the...
I still have some.
We have ours too. And I thought, okay, so we write in a set, so that was kind of my literal thinking was when you write, there must be this set of things.
Well, thank you so much for coming out here and talking to me today.
Thank you. My pleasure. And good luck, everybody, with all of your work. Follow your heart.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Diane Langley. You can find Diane and her book, Life Changes, on Amazon. And you can find me at robinvanauken.com. While you're at my site, download my novel, West Wind. It's free. And speaking of free, I've got 6 free resources for writers and other creatives, so sign up today. Check out the episode and the show notes at robinvanauken.com/session1. Thank you so much, and if you haven't done so, please hit that subscribe button on your device. Until next time, goodbye.